The Mahabharata of KRISHNA-DWAIPAYANA VYASA. Book 1. Adi PARVA. Section 91. Sambhava PARVA. Ashtaka said, those cognizant at the Vedas differ in opinion as to how the followers of each of the four modes of life, namely, Grihastas, Bhikshus, Brahmacharyanas, and Vanaprashthas, should conduct themselves in order to acquire religious merit. Yayagi answered, these are what a Brahmacharya must do. While dwelling in the abode of his preceptor, he must receive lessons only when his preceptor summons him to do so. He must attend to the service of his preceptor without waiting for the latter's command. He must rise from his bed before his preceptor riseth, and go to bed after his preceptor hath gone to bed. He must be humble, must have his passions under complete control, must be patient, vigilant, and devoted to studies. It is then only that he can achieve success. It hath been said in the oldest Upanishad that a grihastha, acquiring wealth by honest means, should perform sacrifices. He should always give something in charity, should perform the rites of hospitality unto all arriving at his abode, and should never use anything without giving a portion thereof to others. A muni, without search for woods, depending on his own vigor, should abstain from all vicious acts, should give away something in charity, should never inflict pain on any creature. It is then only that he can achieve success. He, indeed, is a true Bhikshus who doth not support himself by any manual arts, who possesseth numerous accomplishments, who hath his passions under complete control, who is unconnected with worldly concerns, who sleeps not under the shelter of a householder's roof, who is without wife, and who going a little way every day, travelleth over a large extent of the country. A learned man should adopt the vanaprastha mode of life after performance of the necessary rites, when he hath been able to control his appetites for enjoyment and desire of acquiring valuable possessions. When one dieth in the woods while leading the vanaprastha mode of life, he maketh his ancestors and the successors, numbering 10 generations including himself, mix with the divine essence. Ashtaka asked, how many kinds of munis are there, observers of the vow of the silence? Yayagi answered, he is, indeed, a muni who, though dwelling in the woods, hath an inhabited place near, or who, though dwelling in an inhabited place, hath the woods near. Ashtaka inquired what is meant by muni. Yayagi replied, a muni withdrawing himself from all worldly objects liveth in the woods. And though he might never seek to surround himself with those objects that are procurable in an inhabited place, he might yet obtain them all by virtue of his ascetic and inhabited place near to himself. Again, a wise man withdrawn from all earthly objects, might live in a hamlet leading the life of a hermit. He may never exhibit the pride of family, birth or learning. Clad in the scantiest robes, he may yet regard himself as attired in the richest vestments. He may rest content with food just enough for the support of life. Such a person, though dwelling in an inhabited place, liveth yet in the woods. The person again, who, with passions under complete control, adopteth the vow of silence, refraining from action and entertaining no desire, achieveth success. Why shouldst thou not, indeed, reverence the man who liveth on clean food, who refrains from ever injuring others, whose heart is ever pure, who stands in the splendor of ascetic attributes, who is free from the leaden weight of desire, who abstains from injury even when sanctioned by religion? Emaciated by austerities and reduced in flesh, marrow and blood, such a one conquereth not only this but the highest world. And when the muni sits in yoga meditation, becoming indifferent to happiness and misery, honor and insult, he then leaveth the world and enjoyeth communion with Brahma. When the muni taketh food like wine and other animals, i.e., without providing for it beforehand and without any relish, like a sleeping infant feeding on the mother's lap, then like the all-pervading spirit he becometh identified with the whole universe and attaineth to salvation. Section 92. Ashtaka asked, who amongst these, O king, both exerting constantly like the sun and the moon, first attained to communion with Brahma, the ascetic or the man of knowledge? Yayagi answered, the wise, with the help of the Vedas and of knowledge, having ascertained the visible universe to be illusory, instantly realizes the Supreme Spirit is the sole existent and dependent essence. While they that devote themselves to yoga meditation take time to acquire the same knowledge, for it is by practice alone that these latter divest themselves of the consciousness of quality. Hence the wise attain to salvation first. Then again, if the person devoted to yoga find not sufficient time in one life to attain success, being led astray by the attractions of the world, in his next life he is benefited by the progress already achieved, for he betake himself regretfully to the pursuit of success. But the man of knowledge ever holdeth the indestructible unity, and is, therefore, though steeped in worldly enjoyments, never affected by them at heart. Therefore, there's nothing to impede his salvation. He, however, who fails to attain to knowledge, should yet devote himself to piety as dependent on action, sacrifices and so on. But he that protect himself to such piety, moved directly by desire of salvation, can never achieve success. His sacrifices bear no fruit and partake of the nature of cruelty. Piety which is dependent on action that proceedeth not from the desire of fruit, is, in case of such men, yoga itself. Ashtaka said, O king, thou lookst like a young man. Thou art handsome and decked with a celestial garland. Thy splendor is great. Whence dost thou come and where dost thou go? Whose messenger art thou? Art thou going down into the earth? Yayagi said, fallen from heaven upon the loss of all my religious merits, I am doomed to enter the earth hell. Indeed, I shall go there after I have finished my discourse with you. Even now, the regents of the points of the universe command me to hasten thither. And, O king, I have obtained it as a boon from Indra that though fall I must upon the earth, yet I should fall amidst the wise and the virtuous. Ye are all wise and virtuous that are assembled here. Ashtaka said, thou art acquainted with everything. I ask thee, O king, are there any regions for myself to enjoy in heaven or in the firmament? If there be, then, thou shalt not fall, though falling. Yayagi answered, O king, there are as many regions for thee to enjoy in heaven even as the number of kinging horses on earth with the animals in the wilderness and on the hills. Ashtaka said, if there are worlds for me to enjoy, as fruits of my religious merits, in heaven, O king, I give them all unto thee. Therefore, though fallen, thou shalt not fall. Oh, take thou soon all those, wherever they be, in heaven or in the firmament. Let thy sorrow cease. Yayagi answered, O best of kings, a Brahmano and Brahman alone can take and gift, but not one like ourselves. And, O monarch, I myself have given away to Brahmanas as one should. Let no man who is not a Brahmana and let not the wife of a learned Brahmana ever live in infamy by accepting gifts. While on earth, I ever desired to perform virtuous acts. Having never done so before, how shall I now accept a gift? Pratardana, who was amongst the masked, O thou of the handsomest form, I am Pratardana by name. I ask thee if there are any worlds for me to enjoy as fruits of my religious merits, in heaven or the firmament. Answer me, thou art acquainted with everything. Yayagi said, O king, numberless worlds, full of felicity, fulgent like the solar disk, and where woe can ever dwell, await thee. If thou dwellst in each but for 7 days, they would not yet be exhausted. Pratardana said, these then I give unto thee. Therefore, though fallen, thou must not fall. Let the worlds that are mine be thine, whether they be in the firmament or heaven. Oh, soon take them. Let thy woes cease. Yayagi answered, O monarch, no king of equal energy should ever desire to receive as gift the religious merits of another king acquired by yoga austerities. and no king who is afflicted with calamity through the fates should, if wise, act in a censurable way. A king keeping his eye fixed forever on virtue should walk along the path of virtue like myself, and, knowing what his duties are, should not act so meanly as thou directest. When others desirous of acquiring religious merits do not accept gifts, how can I do what they themselves do not? On the conclusion of this speech, the best of kings, Yayati, was then addressed by Vasumit in the following words. Section 93. Vasumit said, I am Vasumit, the son of Ashvathaswa. I would ask thee, O king, whether there are any worlds for me to enjoy as fruits of my religious merits, in heaven or the firmament. Thou art, O high-souled one, acquainted with all holy regions. Yayagi answered, there are as many regions for thee to enjoy in heaven as the number of places in the firmament, the earth and the 10 points of the universe, illumined by the Sunday. Vasumit then said, I give them to thee. Let those regions that are for me be thine. Therefore, though fallen, thou shalt not fall. If to accept them as gift be improper for thee, then, O monarch, buy them for a straw. Yayagi answered, I do not remember having ever bought and sold anything unfairly. This has never been done by other kings. How shall I therefore do it? Vasumit said, if buying them, O king, be regarded by thee as improper, then take them as guilt from me. For myself I answer that I will never go to those regions that are for me. Let them, therefore, be thine. Siddhi then addressed the king thus, I am, O king, Siddhi by name, the son of Sonaro. O father, are there in the firmament or in heaven any worlds for me to enjoy? Thou knowest every region that one may enjoy as the fruit of his religious merit. Yayagi said, thou hast never, by speech or in mind, disregarded the honest and the virtuous that apply to thee. There are infinite worlds for thee to enjoy in heaven, all blazing like lightning. Siddhi then said, if thou regardest their purchase as improper, I give them to thee. Take them all, O king. I shall never take them, namely, those regions where the wise never feel the least disquiet. Yayagi answered, O Siddhi, thou hast indeed obtained for thyself, possessed of the prowess of Indra, infinite worlds. But I do not desire to enjoy regions given to me by others. Therefore, I accept not thy gift. Ashtaka then said, O king, each of us has expressed his desire to give thee worlds that each of us has acquired by his religious merits. Thou acceptest not them. But leaving them for thee, we shall descend into the earth hell. Yayagi answered, ye all are truth-loving and wise. Give me that which I deserve. I shall not be able to do what I have never done before. Ashtaka then said, whose are those 5 golden cars that we see? Do men that repair to these regions of everlasting bliss ride in them? Yayagi answered, those 5 golden cars displayed in glory, and blazing as fire, would indeed carry you to regions have bliss. Ashtaka said, O king, ride on those cars thyself and repair to heaven. We can wait. We follow thee in time. Yayagi said, we can now all go together. Indeed, all of us have conquered heaven. Behold, the glorious path to heaven becomes visible. Vayampayana continued, then all those excellent monarchs riding in those cars set out for heaven for gaining admittance into it, illuminating the whole firmament by the glory of their virtues. Then Ashtaka, breaking the silence, asked, I had always thought that Indra was my especial friend, and that I, of all others, should first obtain admittance into heaven. But how is it that Sinara's son, Siddhi hath already left us behind? Yayagi answered, this Sinara's son had given all he possessed for attaining to the region of Brahman. Therefore, is he the foremost among us. Besides, Siddha's liberality, asceticism, truth, virtue, modesty, forgiveness, amiability, desire of performing good acts, have been so great that none can measure them. Vayampayana continued. After this, Ashtaka, impelled by curiosity, again asked his maternal grandfather resembling Indra himself, saying, O king, I ask thee, tell me truly, whence thou art, who thou art, and whose son? Is there any other Brahman or Kshatriya who hath done what thou didst on earth? Yayagi answered, I tell thee truly, I am Yayagi, the son of Mahasha and the father of Pru. I was lord of all the earth. Ye are my relatives. I tell thee truly, I am the maternal grandfather of you all. Having conquered the whole earth, I gave clothes to Brahmanas and also 100 handsome horses fit for sacrificial offering. For such acts of virtue, the gods became propitious to those that performed them. I also gave to Brahmanas this whole earth with her horses and elephants and kin and gold, all kinds of wealth, along with 100 herdis of excellent milch cows. Both the earth and the firmament exist owing to my truth and virtue. Fire yet burneth in the world of men owing to my truth and virtue. Never hath a word spoken by me been untrue. It is for this that the wise adore truth. O Ashtaka, all I have told thee, Pratarthana, and Vesarumit, is truth itself. I know it for certain that the gods and the rishis and all the mansions at the blessed are adorable only because of truth that characterizeth them all. He that will without malice duly read unto good Brahmanas his account of our ascension to heaven shall himself attain to the same worlds with us. Vayampayana continued, it was thus that the illustrious King Yayati of high achievements, rescued by his collateral descendants, ascended to heaven, leaving the earth and covering the 3 worlds with the fame of his deeds. Section 94. Janamedaya said, O adorable one, I desire to hear the histories of those kings who were descended from Pru. O tell me of each as he was possessed of prowess and achievements. I have, indeed, heard that in Pru's line there was not a single one who was wanting in good behavior and prowess, or who was without sons. O thou of ascetic wealth, I desire to hear the histories in detail of those famous monarchs endued with learning and all accomplishments. Vayampayana said, asked by thee, I shall tell thee all about the heroic kings in Pru's line, all equal unto Indra in prowess, possessing great affluence and commanding the respect of all for their accomplishments. Pru had by his wife Purashti 3 sons, Pravira, Iswara, and Raudraswa, all of whom were mighty car warriors. Amongst them, Pravira was the perpetuator of the dynasty. Pravira had by his wife Sirasni a son named Manasi. And the latter of eyes like lotus petals had his sway over the whole earth bounded by the 4 seas. And Manasi had for his wife Saudari. And he begat upon her 3 sons called Sekta, Sahana, and Vabmi. And they were heroes in battle and mighty car warriors. The intelligent and virtuous Kautaswa begat upon the Apsarami Sraksi 10 sons who were all great bowmen. And they all grew up into heroes, performing numerous sacrifices in honor of the gods. And they all had sons, were learned in all branches of knowledge and ever devoted to virtue. They are Richi, and Keksra and Virki of great prowess, Sthamdilyu, and Veni, and Jali of great fame, Tegde of great strength and intelligence, and Satari of the prowess of Indra, Dharmi, and Sanati the 10th of the prowess of the Celestials. Amongst them all, Richi became the sole monarch of the whole earth and was known by the name of Anadrishti. And in prowess he was like unto Vasava amongst the Celestials. And Anadrishti had a son of the name of Matinara, who became a famous and virtuous king and performed the Ralazuya and the horse sacrifice. And Matinara had 4 sons of immeasurable prowess, namely, Tangsu, Mayan, Agaritha, and Dra of immeasurable glory. Amongst them, Tangsu of great prowess became the perpetrator of Pru's line. And he subjugated the whole earth and acquired great fame and splendor. And Tangsu begat a son of great prowess named Elena. And he became the foremost of all conquerors and brought the whole world under his subjection. And Elena begat upon his wife Athartara 5 sons with Dusmanta at their head, all equal in might unto the 5 elements. They were Dusmanta, Sura, Bhima, Pravasu, and Vasu. And Ojanamayaya, the eldest of them, Dusmanta, became king. And Dusmanta had by his wife Sakuntala an intelligent son named Bharata who became king. And Bharata gave his name to the race of which he was the founder. And it is from him that the fame of that dynasty hath spread so wide. And Bharata begat upon his 3 wives 9 sons in all. But none of them were like their father, and so Bharata was not at all pleased with them. Their mothers, therefore, became angry and slew them all. The procreation of children by Bharata, therefore, became vain. The monarch then performed a great sacrifice, and through the grace of Bharata obtained a son named Bhumanyu. And then Bharata, the great descendant of Pru, regarding himself as really possessing a son, installed, O foremost one of Bharata's race, that son as his heir or parent. And Bhumanyu begat upon his wife, Pushkarini 6 sons named Sahasra, Salitri, Subhavya, Sijaya, Divyartha and Kachika. The eldest of them all, Sahasra, obtained the throne and performed many Vyasas and horse sacrifices. And Sahasra brought under his sway the whole earth, surrounded by her belts of seizing full of elephants, kin and horses, and all her wealth of gems of gold. And the earth afflicted with the weight of numberless human beings and elephants, horses, and cats, was, as it were, about to sink. And during the virtuous reign of Sahasra the surface of the whole earth was dadded all over with hundreds and thousands of sacrificial stakes. And the Lord of the earth, Sahasra, begat upon his wife Shaki 3 sons, namely, Ajamatha, Sumatha, and Prumitha. The eldest of them, Ajamatha, was the perpetuator of the royal line. And he begat 6 sons. Riksha was born of the womb of Dusmani, Dusmanta and Parameshtin, of Nili, and Jen, Jala and Rupina were born in that of Kasini. All the tribes of the Panchalas are descended from Dusmanta and Parameshtin. And the Kushikas are the sons have Jen of immeasurable prowess. And Riksha, who was older than both Jala and Rupina, became king. And Riksha begat Sambharana, the perpetuator of the royal line. And, O king, it hath been heard by us that while Sambharana, the son of Riksha, was ruling the earth, there happened a great loss of people from famine, pestilence, drought, and disease. And the Bharata princes were beaten by the troops of enemies. And the Panchalas, setting out to invade the whole earth with their 4 kinds of troops, soon brought the whole earth under their sway. And with their 10 Akshohinis the king of the Panchalas defeated the Bharata prince. Sambharana then with his wife and ministers, sons and relatives, fled in fear, and took shelter in the forest on the banks of the Sindhu extending to the foot of the mountains. There the Bharatas lived for a full 1,000 years, within their fort. And after they had lived there 1,000 years, one day the illustrious Rishi Vasishtha approached the exiled Bharatas, who, on going out, saluted the Rishi and worshipped him by the offer of Arghya. And entertaining him with reverence, they represented everything unto that illustrious Rishi. And after he was seated on his seat, the king himself approached the Rishi and addressed him, saying, "Thou art a priest, O illustrious one. We'll endeavor to regain our kingdom." And Vasishtha answered the Bharatas by saying, "The sign of consent." It hath been heard by us that Vasishtha then installed the Bharata prince in the sovereignty of all the Kshatriyas on earth, making by virtue of his mattress this descendant of Pru the veritable horns of the wild bull or the tusks of the wild elephants. And the king retook the capital that had been taken away from him and once more made all monarchs pay tribute to him. the powerful Sambhava, thus installed once more in the actual sovereignty of the whole earth, performed many sacrifices at which the presents to the Brahmanas were great. Sambhava begat upon his wife, Tatpati, the daughter of Jarya, a son named Kru. This Kru was exceedingly virtuous, and therefore, he was installed on the throne by his people. It is after his name that the field called Kurujanga has become so famous in the world. Devoted to asceticism, he made that field, Kurukshetra, sacred by practicing asceticism there. And it has been heard by us that Kru's highly intelligent wife, Vahini, brought forth 5 sons, namely, Avikshit, Bhavishyanta, Chaitratha, Muni and the celebrated Janamaya. And Avikshit begat Parikshit the powerful, Savalaswa, Atirusha, Virja, Samali of great physical strength, Ikasravas, Bhamgakaranjidari the 8th. In the race of these were born, as the fruit of their pious acts, 7 mighty car warriors with Janamaya at their head. And unto Parikshit were born sons who were all acquainted with the secrets of religion and profit. And they were named Kakshasana and Ugrasana, and Chitrasana endued with great energy, and Indrasana and Shina and Bhimasena. And the sons of Janamaya were all endued with great strength, and became celebrated all over the world. And there were Dhritarashtra who was the eldest, and Pandu and Valhika, and Nishada endued with great energy, and then the mighty Janvanada, and then Kandodara and Petati, and then Vasadi the 8th. And they were all proficient in morality and profit, and were kind to all creatures. Among them Dhritarashtra became king. And Dhritarashtra had 8 sons, namely, Kumdika, Hasty, Vidarka, Kretha the 5th, Havasravas, Indrabha, and Bhamyu the invincible, and Dhritarashtra had many grandsons, of whom 3 only were famous. They were, O king, Pratapa, Dharmanektra, Sunetra. Among these 3, Pratapa became unrivaled on earth. And, O bull in Bharata's race, Pratapa begat 3 sons, namely, Divapi, Sentin, and the mighty car warrior Valhika. The eldest Divapi adopted the ascetic course of life, impelled thereto by the desire of benefiting his brothers. And the kingdom was obtained by Sentin and the mighty car warrior Valhika. O monarch, besides, there were born in the race of Bharata numberless other excellent monarchs endued with great energy and like unto the celestial rishis themselves in virtue and ascetic power. And so also in the race of Manu were born many mighty car warriors like unto the celestials themselves, who by their number swelled the Arila dynasty into gigantic proportions. Section 95. Janamaya said, O Brahmana, I have now heard from thee this great history of my ancestors. I had also heard from thee about the great monarchs that were born in this line. But I have not been gratified, this charming account being so short. Therefore, be pleased, O Brahmana, to recite the delightful narrative just in detail, commencing from Manu, the Lord of creation. Who is there that will not be charmed with such an account, as it is sacred? The fame of these monarchs increased by their wisdom, virtue, accomplishments, and high character, half so swells as to cover the 3 worlds. Having listened to the history, sweet as nectar, of their liberality, prowess, physical strength, mental vigor, energy, and perseverance, I have not been satiated. Vyampayana said, Hear then, O monarch, as I recite in full the auspicious account of thy own race just as I had heard it from Dwapayana before. Eksha begat Aditi, and Aditi begat Vivaswat, and Vivaswat begat Manu, and Manu begat Ha, and Ha begat Puravas. And Puravas begat Aus, and Aus begat Nahusha, and Nahusha begat Yayati. And Yayati had 2 wives, namely, Devayani, the daughter of Usanis, and Sarmishta the daughter of Rishabharvan. Here occurs a solid clue regarding Yayadi's descendants. Devayani gave birth to Yadu and Travasu, and Vrishaparvan's daughter, Sarmishta, gave birth to Dri, and Pru. And the descendants of Yadu are the Yadavas and the Parvas. And Pru had a wife of the name of Kasiya, on whom he begat a son named Janamaya, who performed 3 horse sacrifices and a sacrifice called Swajit. And then he entered into the woods. And Janamaya had married Ananta, the daughter of Merida, and begat upon her son called Prekinwat. And the prince was so called because he had conquered all the eastern countries up to the very confines of the region where the sun rises. And Prekinwa married Esmaki, a daughter of the Yadavas, and begat upon her son named Sinyadi. And Sinyadi married Varangi, the daughter of Drishadwata, and begat upon her son named Ahyanti. And Ahyanti married Bhamumati, the daughter of Kritavirya, and begat upon her son named Sarvapurma. And Sarvapurma married Sunda, the daughter of the Kekri prince, having obtained her by force. And he begat upon her son named Jaitsena, who married Susrava, the daughter of the Vidarbha king, and begat upon her Avakana. And Avakana also married another princess of Vidarbha, Maryada by name. And he begat on her son named Arhan. And Arhan married Anji, and begat on her Mahabharata. And Mahabharata married Soyajna, the daughter of Prasnajit. And of her was born Utanadi. And he was so called because he had performed a sacrifice at which the fat of Anuta, 10,000s, of male beings was required. And Utanaya took for a wife Kama, the daughter of Prithasravas. And by her was born a son named Akarna, who took to wife Karamba, the daughter of the king of Kalinga. And of her was born Devatati, and Devatati took for his wife Marida, the princess of Vidha. And of her was born a son named Arhan. And Arhan took to wife Sudha, the princess of Inga, and upon her he begat a son named Riksha. And Riksha married Dwala, the daughter of Takshaka, and he begat upon her son of the name of Matinara, who performed on the bank of Saraswati the 12-year sacrifice, said to be so efficacious. On conclusion of the sacrifice, Saraswati appeared in person before the king and chose him for husband. And he begat upon her son named Tansu. Here occurs a solid descriptive of Tansu's descendants. Tansu was born of Saraswati by Matinara. And Tansu himself begat a son named Elena on his wife, the princess Kalanki. Elena begat on his wife Arthamtari 5 sons, of whom Jusmanta was the eldest. And Jusmanta took to wife Sakuntarla, the daughter of Swamitra. And he begat on her son named Bharata. Here occurs 2 solid clues about Jusmanta's descendants. The mother is but the sheath of flesh in which the father begets the son. Indeed, the father himself is the son. Therefore, O Jusmanta, support thy son and insult not Sakuntarla. O God among men, the Father himself becoming the Son rescueth himself from hell. Sakuntala hath truly said that thou art the author of this child's being. It is for this, that is, because the king supported his child after hearing the above speech of the celestial messenger, that Sakuntala's son came to be called Bharata, the supported. And Bharata married Sunda, the daughter of Sarvasena, the king of Kasi, and begat upon her the son named Bhamumati. And Bhamumati married Vijaya, the daughter of Desha. And he begat upon her son Shaltra, who married Suvarna, the daughter of Vikshvaka. To her was born a son named Hasty, who founded the city, which has, therefore, been called Hastinapura. And Hasty married Yasadhara, the princess of Trigarda. And of her was born a son named Vakuntana, who took for a wife Sudha, the princess of Desha. And by her was born a son named Dejamaha. And Dejamata had 4 wives named Rakhi, Ganguli, Gazal and Riksha. And he begat on them 2,400 sons. But amongst them all, Sambhava became the perpetuator of the dynasty. And Sambhava took for his wife Tatpati, the daughter of VYASA. And of her was born Kru, who married Sopanji, the princess of Desha. And he begat on her son named Vidratha, who took to wife Supriya, the daughter of the Madhavas. And he begat upon her son named Anaswan. And Anaswan married Damrata, the daughter of the Madhavas. And of her was born a son named Parikshit, who took for his wife Suvasa, the daughter of the Vudas, and begat upon her son named Bhimasena. And Bhimasena married Kumari, the princess of Kekaya, and begat upon her Purvasravas, whose son was Pratapa. And Pratapa married Sunda, the daughter of Sivi, and begat upon her 3 sons, namely, Divapi, Sentin and Valhika. And Divapi, while still a boy, entered the woods as a hermit. And Sentin became king. Here occurs a sulika in respect of Sentin. Those old men that were touched by this monarch not only felt an indescribable sensation of pleasure but also became restored to youth. Therefore, this monarch was called Sentin. And Sentin married Ganga, who bore him a son Bhavata, who was afterwards called Bhishma. And Bhishma, moved by the desire of doing good to his father, got married to Satyavati, who was also called Gandakali. And in her maidenhood she had a son by Parsara, named Dwapayana. And upon her Sentin begat 2 other sons named Chitrangada and Vishatravarya. And before they attained to majority, Chitrangada had been slain by the Gandharvas. But Vishatravarya became king, and married the 2 daughters of the king of Kasi, named Ambika and Amvalika. But Vishatravarya died childless. Then Satyavati began to think as to how the dynasty of Dusmanta might be perpetuated. Then she recollected the Rishi Dwapayana. The latter coming before her, asked, "What are thy commands?" She said, "Thy brother Vishatravarya hath gone to heaven childless. Beget virtuous children for him." Dwapayana, consenting to this, begat 3 children, namely, Dhrashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. King Dhrashtra had 100 sons by his wife, Gandhari, in consequence of that boon granted by Dwapayana. And amongst those 100 sons have Dhrashtra 4 became celebrated. They are Dhrudana, Dusasana, Vikarna, and Chitrasana. And Pandu had 2 jewels of wives, namely, Kunti, also called Prita, and Matri. One day Pandu, while out hunting, saw a deer covering its mate. That was really a rishi in the form of a deer. Seeing the deer in that attitude, he killed it with his arrows, before its desire was gratified. Pierced with the king's arrow, the deer quickly changed its form and became a rishi, and said unto Pandu, "O Pandu, thou art virtuous and acquainted also with the pleasure derived from the gratification of one's desire. My desire unsatisfied, thou hast slain me. Therefore, thou also, when so engaged and before thou art gratified, shalt die." Pandu, hearing this curse, became pale, and from that time would not go in unto his wives. And he told them these words, "Through my own fault, I have been cursed. But I have heard that for the childless there are no regions hereafter." Therefore, he solicited Kunti to have offspring raised for him. And Kunti said, "Let it be." So she raised up offspring. By Dharma she had Yudhishthira, by Maruta, Bhima, and by Sakra, Arjuna. And Pandu, well pleased with her, said, "This thy co-wife is also childless. Therefore, cause her also to bear children." Kunti saying, "So be it," imparted unto Matri the mantra of invocation. And Matri were raised by the twin twins, the twins Nakula and Sahadeva. And, one day, Pandu, beholding Matri decked with ornaments, had his desire kindled. And, as soon as he touched her, he died. Maitri ascended the funeral pyre with her lord. And she said unto Kunti, "Let these twins have mine be brought up by thee with affection." After some time those 5 Pandavas were taken by the ascetics of the woods to Hastinapura and there introduced to Bhishma and Vidura. And after introducing them, the ascetics disappeared in the very sight of all. And after the conclusion of the speech of those ascetics, flowers were showered down upon the spot, and the celestial drums also were beaten in the skies. The Pandavas were then taken by Bhishma. They then represented the death of their father and performed his last honors duly. And as they were brought up there, Duryodhana became exceedingly jealous of them. And the sinful Duryodhana, acting like Rakshasa, tried various means to drive them away. But what must be can never be frustrated. So all Duryodhana's efforts proved futile. Then Dhritarashtra sent them, by an act of deception, to Varanavata, and they went there willingly. There an endeavor was made to burn them to death, but it proved abortive owing to the warning counsels of Vidura. After that the Pandavas slew Hitamva, and then they went to a town called Ekakakra. There also they slew a Rakshasa of the name of Akka, and then went to Panchala. And there obtaining Draupadi for a wife they returned to Hastinapura. And there they dwelt for some time in peace and begat children. And Yudhishthira begat Pradavandya, Bhima, Stasoma, Arjuna, Srutakirti, Nakula, Setnika, and Setadha, Srutakarman. Besides these, Yudhishthira, having obtained for his wife Dvika, the daughter of Govardhana of the Sravya tribe, in a self-choice ceremony, begat upon her son named Yudhaya. And Bhima also obtaining for a wife Velandra, the daughter of the king of Kasi, offered his own prowess as dower and begat upon her son named Sarvika. And Arjuna also, repairing to Dwarvati, brought away by force Subhadra, the sweet-speeched sister of Vasudeva, and returned in happiness to Hastinapura. And he begat upon her son named Abhimanyu, endued with all accomplishments and dear to Vasudeva himself. And Nakula obtaining for his wife Karnavati, the princess of Chedi, begat upon her son named Niramitra. And Sahadeva also married Vijaya, the daughter of Diyatamat, the king of Madra, obtaining her in a self-choice ceremony, and begat upon her son named Sahatra. And Bhima had some time before begat upon Hitamva a son named Ghatakacha. These are the 11 sons have the Pandavas. Amongst them all, Abhimanyu was the perpetuator of the family. He married Uttara, the daughter of Virata, who brought forth a dead child whom Kunti took up on her lap at the command of Vasudeva, who said, "I will revive this child of 6 months." And though born before time, having been burnt by the fire of Aswatthama's weapon and, therefore, deprived of strength and energy, he was revived by Vasudeva and endued with strength, energy and prowess. And after reviving him, Vasudeva said, "Because this child hath been born in an extinct race, therefore, he shall be called Parikshit." And Parikshit married Bhagavati, thy mother, O king, and thou art born to her, O Janamaya. Thou hast also begotten 2 sons and thy wife Pushtama, named Setnika and Sankarna. And Setnika also hath begotten 1 son named Aswamnadatra upon the princess of Vidha. Thus have I, O king, recited the history of the descendants of Puranda the Pandavas. This excellent, virtue-increasing, and sacred history should ever be listened to by observing Brahmanas, by Kshatriyas devoted to the practices of their order and ready to protect their subjects, by Vyas with attention, and by Siddhas with reverence, whose chief occupation is to wait upon the 3 other orders. Brahmanas conversant in the Vedas and other persons, who with attention and reverence recite this sacred history or listen to it when recited, conquer the heavens and attain to the abode of the blessed. They are also always respected and adored by the gods, Brahmanas, and other men. This holy history Bharata hath been composed by the sacred and illustrious VYASA. VYASA, knowing Brahmanas and other persons who with reverence and without malice hear it recited, earn great religious merits and conquer the heavens. Though sinning, they are not disregarded by anyone. Here occurs a solika. This, Bharata, is equal unto the Vedas. It is holy and excellent. It bestoweth wealth, fame, and life. Therefore, it should be listened to by men with rapt attention. Section 96. Vayampayana said, there was a king known by the name of Mahabharata, born in the race of Ikshvaka. He was the lord of all the earth, and was truthful in speech, and had true prowess. By 1,000 horse sacrifices and 100 rajas he had gratified the chief of the celestials and ultimately attained to heaven. One day the celestials had assembled together and were worshipping Brahman. Many royal sages and King Mahabharata also were present on the spot. And Ganga, the queen of rivers, also came there to pay her adorations to the grandsire. And her garments, white as the beams of the moon, was displaced by the action of the wind. And as her person became exposed, the celestials bent down their heads. But the royal sage Mahabharata rudely stared at the queen of rivers. And Mahabharata was for this cursed by Brahman, who said, wretch, as thou hast forgotten thyself at the sight of Ganga, thou shalt be reborn on earth. But thou shalt again and again attain to these regions. And she, too, shall be born in the world of men, and shall do thee injuries. But when thy wrath shall be provoked, thou shalt then be freed from my curse. Vayampayana continued, King Mahabharata then, recollecting all the monarchs and ascetics on earth, wished to be born as son the product of great prowess. And the queen of rivers, too, seeing King Mahabharata lose his firmness, went away, thinking of him wishfully. And on her way, she saw those dwellers in heaven, the Vyasas, also pursuing the same path. And the queen of rivers, beholding them in the predicament, asked them, why look ye so dejected? Ye dwellers in heaven, is everything right with you? Those celestials, the Vyasas, answered her, saying, O queen of rivers, we have been cursed, for of nil fault, by the illustrious Vasishtha in anger. The foremost of excellent rishis, Vasishtha, had been engaged in his twilight adorations unseated as he was. He could not be seen by us. We crossed him in ignorance. Therefore, in wrath he hath cursed us, saying, Be ye born among men. It is beyond our power to frustrate what hath been said by that utterance of Brahma. Therefore, O river, thyself becoming a human female, make us the Vyasas, thy children. O amiable one, we are unwilling to enter the womb of any human female. Thus addressed, the queen of rivers told them, Bhiksa, and asked them, on earth, who is the foremost of men whom ye will make your father? The Vyasas replied, on earth, unto Pratapa shall be born a son, Sentin, who will be a king of worldwide fame. Ganga then said, Ye celestials, that is exactly my wish which ye senseless ones have expressed. I shall, indeed, do good to that Sentin. That is also your desires just expressed. The Vyasas then said, It behoveth thee to throw thy children after birth into the water, so that, O thou of three courses, celestial, terrestrial, and subterranean, we may be rescued soon without having to live on earth for any length of time. Ganga then answered, I shall do what ye desire. But in order that his intercourse with me may not be entirely fruitless, provide ye that one son at least may live. The Vyasas then replied, We shall each contribute an eighth part of our respective energies with the sum of, thou shalt have one son according to thy endless wishes. But this son shall not beget any children on earth. Therefore, that son of thine endued with great energy, shall be childless. The Vyasas, making this arrangement with Ganga, went away without waiting to the place they liked. Section 97. Vayampayana said, there was a king of the name of Pratapa, who was kind to all creatures. He spent many years in ascetic penances at the source of the river Ganga. The accomplished and lovely Ganga, one day, assuming the form of a beautiful female, and rising from the waters, made up to the monarch. The celestial maiden, endued with ravishing beauty, approached the royal sage engaged in ascetic austerities, and sat upon his right thigh that was, for manly strength, a veritable solitary. When the maiden of handsome face had so sat upon his lap, the monarch said unto her, O amiable one, what dost thou desire? What shall I do? The damsel answered, I desire thee, O king, from my husband. O foremost one of the crews, be mine. To refuse a woman coming of her own accord is never applauded by the wise. Pratapa answered, O thou of the fairest complexion, moved by lust, I never go in unto others' wives or women that are not of my order. This, indeed, is my virtuous vow. The maiden rejoined, I am not an auspicious or ugly. I am every way worthy of being enjoyed. I am a celestial maiden of rare beauty. I desire thee for my husband. Refuse me not, O king. To this Pratapa answered, I am, O damsel, abstaining from that course to which thou wouldst incite me. If I break my vow, sin will overwhelm and kill me. O thou of the fairest complexion, thou hast embraced me, sitting on my right thigh. But, O timid one, know that this is the seat for daughters and daughters-in-law. The left lap is for the wife, but thou hast not accepted that. Therefore, O best of women, I cannot enjoy thee as an object of desire. Be my daughter-in-law. I accept thee for my son. The damsel then said, O virtuous one, let it be as thou sayest. Let me be united with thy son. From my respect for thee, I shall be a wife of the celebrated Bharata race. Ye, of the Bharata race, are the refuge of all the monarchs on earth. I am incapable of numbering the virtues of this race even within 100 years. The greatness and goodness of many celebrated monarchs of this race are limitless. O Lord of all, let it be understood now that when I become thy daughter-in-law, thy son shall not be able to judge of the propriety of my acts. Living thus with thy son, I shall do good to him and increase his happiness. And he shall finally attain to heaven in consequence of the sons I shall bear him, and of his virtues and good conduct. Vayyampayana continued, O king, having said so, the celestial damsel disappeared then and there. And the king, too, waited for the birth of his son in order to fulfill his promise. About this time Pratapa, that light of the crew race, the bull amongst KSHATRIYAS, was engaged, along with his wife, in austerities from desire of offspring. And when they had grown old, a son was born unto them. This was no other than Mahabharata. And the child was called Santan because he was born when his father had controlled his passions by ascetic penances. And the best of crews, Santan, knowing that region of indestructible bliss can be acquired by one's deeds alone, became devoted to virtue. When Santan grew up into a youth, Pratapa addressed him and said, Some time ago, O Santan, a celestial damsel came to me for thy good. If thou meetst that fair complexioned one in secret and if she solicit thee for children, accept her as thy wife. And, O sinless one, judge not of the propriety or impropriety of her action and ask not who she is, or whose or whence, but accept her as thy wife at my command. Vayyampayana continued, Pratapa, having thus commanded his son Santan and installed him on his throne, retired into the woods. And King Santan, endued with great intelligence and equal unto Indra himself in splendor, became addicted to hunting and passed much of his time in the woods. And the best of monarchs always slew deer and buffaloes. And one day, as he was wandering along the bank of the Ganges, he came upon a region frequented by Siddhas and Karanas. And there he saw a lovely maiden of blazing beauty and like unto another Shri herself. of faultless and pearly teeth, and decked with celestial ornaments, and attired in garments of fine texture that resembled in splendor the filaments of the lotus. And the monarch, on beholding the damsel, became surprised, and his raptures produced instant horripilation. With steadfast gaze he seemed to be drinking her charms, but repeated draughts failed to quench his thirst. The damsel also beholding the monarch ablaze in splendor moving about in great agitation, was moved herself and experienced an affection for him. She gazed, and longed to gaze on him evermore. The monarch then in soft words addressed her and said, "O slender-waisted one, be thou a goddess or the daughter of a Dandava, be thou of the race of the Gandharvas, or Apsaras, be thou of the Yakshas or the Nagas, or be thou of human origin, O thou of celestial beauty, I solicit thee to be my wife." Section 98. VYASA said, the maiden then, hearing those soft and sweet words of the smiling monarch, and remembering her promise to the Vyasas, addressed the king in reply. Of faultless features, the damsel sending a thrill of pleasure into the heart by every word she uttered, said, "O king, I shall become thy wife and obey thy commands. But, O monarch, thou must not interfere with me in anything I do, be it agreeable or disagreeable. Nor shalt thou ever address me unkindly. As long as thou shalt behave kindly I promise to live with thee. But I shall certainly leave thee the moment thou interferes with me or speaks to me an unkind word." The king answered, "Be it so." And thereupon the damsel obtaining that excellent monarch, that formless one of the Bharata race for her husband, became highly pleased. And King Sentin also, obtaining her for his wife, enjoyed to the full the pleasure of her company. And adhering to his promise, he refrained from asking her anything. And the Lord of Earth, Sentin, became exceedingly gratified with her conduct, beauty, magnanimity, and attention to his comforts. And the goddess Ganga also, of three courses, celestial, terrestrial, and subterranean, assuming a human form of superior complexion and endued with celestial beauty, lived happily as the wife of Sentin, having as the fruit of her virtuous acts, obtained for her husband, that tiger among kings equal unto Indra himself in splendor. And she gratified the king by her attractiveness and affection, by her wiles and love, by her music and dance, and became herself gratified. And the monarch was so enraptured with this beautiful wife that months, seasons, and years rolled on without his being conscious of them. And the king, while thus enjoying himself with his wife, had 8 children born unto him who in beauty were like the very celestials themselves. But, O Bharata, those children, one after another, as soon as they were born, were thrown into the river by Ganga, who said, "This is for thy good." And the children sank to rise no more. The king, however, could not be pleased with such conduct. But he spoke not a word about it lest his wife should leave him. But when the 8th child was born, and when his wife was about to throw it smilingly into the river, the king with a sorrowful countenance and desirous of saving it from destruction, addressed her and said, "Kill it not. Who art thou and whose? Why dost thou kill thy own children? Murders of thy sons, the load of thy sins is great." His wife, thus addressed, replied, "O thou desirous of offspring, thou hast already become the first of those that have children. I shall not destroy this child of thine. But according to our agreement, the period of my stay with thee is at an end. I am Ganga, the daughter of Jen. I am ever worshipped by the great sages. I have lived with thee so long for accomplishing the purposes of the celestials." The 8 illustrious Vyasas endued with great energy had, from Vasishtha's curse, to assume human forms. On earth, besides thee, there is none else to deserve the honor of being their begetter. There is no woman also on earth except one like me, a celestial of human form, to become their mother. I assumed a human form to bring them forth. Thou also, having become the father of the 8 Vyasas, hast acquired many regions have perennial bliss. It was also agreed between myself and the Vyasas that I should free them from their human forms as soon as they would be born. I have thus freed them from the curse of the Rishi Epada. Blessed be thou. I leave thee, O king. But rear thou this child of rigid vows. That I should live with thee so long was the promise I gave to the Vyasas. And let this child be called Gangadatta. Section 99. Sentin asked, what was the fault of the Vyasas and who was Epada, through whose curse the Vyasas had to be born among men? What also hath this child of thine, Gangadatta, done for which he shall have to live among men? Why also were the Vyasas, the lords of the three worlds, condemned to be born amongst men? O daughter of Jen, tell me all. VYASA continued, thus addressed, the celestial daughter of Jen, Ganga, then replied unto the monarch, her husband, the bull amongst men, saying, O best of Bharatas race, he who was obtained thus son by Varuna was called Vasishta, the Muni who afterwards came to be known as Epada. He had his asylum on the breast of the king of mountains called Mare. The spot was sacred and abounded with birds and beasts. And there bloomed at all times of the year flowers of every season. And, O best of Bharatas race, that foremost of virtuous men, the son of Varuna, practiced his ascetic penances in those woods abounding with sweet roots and water. Daksha had a daughter known by the name of Sraghi, who, O bull of Bharatas race, for benefiting the world, brought forth, by her connection with Kasyapa, a daughter, Nandini, in the form of a cow. That foremost of all kin, Nandini, was a cow of plenty, capable of granting every desire. The virtuous son of Varuna obtained Nandini for his Homa rites. And Nandini, dwelling in that hermitage which was adored by Munis, roamed about fearlessly in those sacred and delightful woods. One day, O bull of Bharatas race, there came into those woods adored by the gods and celestial rishis, the Vyasas with Prith at their head. And wandering there with their wives, they enjoyed themselves in those delightful woods and mountains. And as they wandered there, the slender-waisted wife of one of the Vyasas, O thou of the prowess of Indra, saw in those woods Nandini, the cow of plenty. And seeing that cow possessing the wealth of all accomplishments, large eyes, full udders, fine tail, beautiful hoofs, and every other auspicious sign, in yielding much milk, she showed the animal to her husband Dia. O thou of the prowess of the first of elephants, when Dia was shown that cow, he began to admire her several qualities and addressing his wife, said, O black-eyed girl of fair thighs, this excellent cow belongeth to that rishi whose is this delightful asylum. O slender-waisted one, the mortal who drinketh the sweet milk of this cow remaineth in unchanged youth for 10,000 years. O best of monarchs, hearing this, the slender-waisted goddess of faultless features then addressed her lord of blazing splendor and said, There is on earth a friend of mine, Chittavati by name, possessed of great beauty and youth. She is the daughter of the god among men, the royal sage Sanara, endued with intelligence and devoted to truth. I desire to have this cow, O illustrious one, with her calf for that friend of mine. Therefore, O best of celestials, bring that cow so that my friend drinking of her milk may alone become on earth free from disease and decrepitude. O illustrious and blameless one, it behoveth thee to grant me this desire of mine. There is nothing that would be more agreeable to me. On hearing these words of his wife, Dia, moved by the desire of humoring her, stole the cow, aided by his brothers Prith and the others. Indeed, Dia, commanded by his lotus-eyed wife, did her bidding, forgetting at the moment the high ascetic merits of the rishi who owned her. He did not think at the time that he was going to fall by committing the sin of stealing the cow. When the son of Varuna returned to his asylum in the evening with fruits he had collected, he beheld not the cow with her calf there. He began to search for them in the woods, but when the great ascetic of superior intelligence found not his cow on search, he saw by his ascetic vision that she had been stolen by the Vyasas. his wrath was instantly kindled, and he cursed the Vyasas, saying, "Because the Vyasas have stolen my cow of sweet milk and handsome tail, therefore shall they certainly be born on earth." O thou bull of Bharatas race, the illustrious Rishyakpada thus cursed the Vyasas in wrath. And having cursed them, the illustrious one set his heart once more on ascetic meditation. And after that Brahmarshi of great power and ascetic wealth had thus in wrath cursed the Vyasas, the latter, O king, coming to know of it, speedily came into his asylum. And addressing the Rishi, O bull among kings, they endeavored to pacify him. But they failed, O tiger among men, to obtain grace from Apada, that Rishi conversant with all rules of virtue. The virtuous Apada, however, said, "Ye Vyasas, with Dava and others, ye have been cursed by me. But ye shall be freed from my curse within a year of your birth among men. But he for whose deed ye have been cursed by me, namely, Dia, shall for his sinful act, have to dwell on earth for a length of time. I shall not make futile the words I have uttered in wrath. Dia, though dwelling on earth, shall not beget children. He shall, however, be virtuous in conversing with the scriptures. He shall be an obedient son to his father, but he shall have to abstain from the pleasure of female companionship." Thus addressing the Vyasas, the great Rishi went away. The Vyasas then together came to me. And, O king, they begged of me the boon that as soon as they would be born, I should throw them into the water. And, O best of kings, I did as they desired, in order to free them from their earthly life. And O best of kings, from the Rishi's curse, this one only, namely, Dia, himself, is to live on earth for some time. Vyampayana continued, having said this, the goddess disappeared then and there. And taking with her the child, she went away to the region she chose. And that child of Sentin was named both Ganguli and Mahabharata and excelled his father in all accomplishments. Sentin, after the disappearance of his wife, returned to his capital with a sorrowful heart. I shall now recount to thee the many virtues and the great good fortune of the illustrious King Sentin of the Bharata race. Indeed, it is this splendid history that is called the Mahabharata. Section 100. Vyampayana said, the monarch Sentin, the most adored of the gods and royal sages, was known in all the worlds for his wisdom, virtues, and truthfulness of speech. The qualities of self-control, liberality, forgiveness, intelligence, modesty, patience and superior energy ever dwelt in that bull among men, namely, Sentin, that great being endued with these accomplishments and conversing with both religion and profit, the monarch was at once the protector of the Bharata race and all human beings. His neck was marked with 3 lines, like a conch shell. His shoulders were broad, and he resembled in prowess an infuriated elephant. It would seem that all the auspicious signs of royalty dwelt in his person, considering them to be their fittest abode. Men, seeing the behavior of the monarch of great achievements, came to know that virtue was ever superior to pleasure and profit. These were the attributes that dwelt in the great being, the bull among men, Sentin. And truly there was never a king like Sentin. All the kings of the earth, beholding him devoted to virtue, bestowed upon that foremost of virtuous men the title of King of Kings. And all the kings of the earth during the time of that Lord Protector of the Bharata race, were without woe and fear and anxiety of any kind. And they all slept in peace, rising from bed every morning after happy dreams. And owing to that monarch of splendid achievements resembling Indra himself in energy, all the kings of the earth became virtuous and devoted to liberality, religious acts and sacrifices. And when the earth was ruled by Sentin and other monarchs like him, the religious merits of every order increased very greatly. The KSHATRIYS served the Brahmanas. The Vyas waited upon the KSHATRIYS, and the Sudras adoring the Brahmanas and the KSHATRIYS waited upon the Vyas. and Senten, residing in Hastinapura, the delightful capital of the Krus, ruled the whole earth bounded by seas. He was truthful and guileless, and like the king of the celestials himself conversing with the dictates of virtue. And from the combination in him of liberality, religion and asceticism, he acquired a great good fortune. He was free from anger and malice, and was handsome in person like Soma himself. In splendor he was like the sun, and in impetuosity of valor like Vaya. In wrath he was like Yama, and in patience like the earth. And, O king, while Senten ruled the earth, no deer, boars, birds, or other animals were needlessly slain. In his dominions the great virtue of kindness to all creatures prevailed, and the king himself, with a soul of mercy, and void of desire and wrath, extended equal protection unto all creatures. Then sacrifices in honor of the gods, the rishis, and pillars commenced, and no creature was deprived of life sinfully. And Senten was the king and father of all, of those that were miserable and those that had no protectors, of birds and beasts, in fact, of every created thing. And during the rule of the best of Krus, of that king of kings, speech became united with truth, and the minds of men were directed towards liberality and virtue. And Senten, having enjoyed domestic felicity for 36 years, retired into the woods. And Senten's son, the Vasu born of Ganga, named Jvavrata, resembled Senten himself in personal beauty, in habits and behavior, and in learning. And in all branches of knowledge, worldly or spiritual, his skill was very great. His strength and energy were extraordinary. He became a mighty car warrior. In fact, he was a great king. One day, while pursuing along the banks of the Ganges a deer that he had struck with his arrow, King Senten observed that the river had become shallow. On observing this, the bull among men, namely Senten, began to reflect upon this strange phenomenon. He mentally asked why the first of rivers ran out so quickly as before. And while seeking for a cause, the illustrious monarch beheld that a youth of great comeliness, well-built and amiable person, like Indra himself, had, by his keen celestial weapon, checked the flow of the river. And the king, beholding this extraordinary feat of the river Ganga having been checked in her course near where that youth stood, became very much surprised. This youth was no other than Senten's son himself. But as Senten had seen his son only once a few moments after his birth, he had not sufficient recollection to identify that infant with the youth before his eyes. The youth, however, seeing his father, knew him at once, but instead of disclosing himself, he clouded the king's perception by his celestial powers of illusion and disappeared in his very sight. King Senten, wondering much at what he saw and imagining the youth to be his own son, then addressed Ganga and said, "Show me that child." Ganga, thus addressed, assuming a beautiful form, and holding the boy decked with ornaments in her right arm, showed him to Senten. And Senten did not recognize that beautiful female bedecked with ornaments and attired in fine robes of white, although he had known her before. And Ganga said, "O tiger among men, that ape son whom thou had some time before begat upon me is this. Know that this excellent child is conversing with all weapons, O monarch, take him now. I have reared him with care. And go home, O tiger among men, taking him with thee. Endued with superior intelligence, he has studied with Vasishta the entire Vedas with their branches. Skilled in all weapons and a mighty bowman, it is like Indra in battle. And, O Bharata, both the gods and the Urjalas look upon him with favor. Whatever branches of knowledge are known to Usanas, this one knoweth completely. And so is he the master of all those Zastras that the son of Angiras, Vrahaspati, adored by the gods and the Urjalas, knoweth. And all the weapons known to the powerful and invincible Rama, the son of Jamadagni, are known to this illustrious son of mighty arms. O king of superior courage, take this thy own heroic child given unto thee by me. He is a mighty bowman and conversing with the interpretation of all treatises on the duties of a king. Thus commanded by Ganga, Sentin took his child resembling the sun himself in glory and returned to his capital. And having reached his city that was like unto the celestial capital, that monarch of Ruslan regarded himself greatly fortunate. And having summoned all the PARVAs together, for the protection of his kingdom he installed his son as his heir apparent. A noble of VYASA race, the prince soon gratified by his behavior his father and the other members of the PARVA race, in fact, all the subjects of the kingdom. And the king of incomparable prowess lived happily with that son of his. 4 years had thus passed away, when the king one day went into the woods on the bank of the Yamuna. And while the king was rambling there, he perceived a sweet scent coming from an unknown direction. And the monarch, impelled by the desire of ascertaining the cause, wandered hither and thither. And in course of his ramble, he beheld a black-eyed maiden of celestial beauty, the daughter of a fisherman. The king addressing her, said, "Who art thou, and whose daughter? What dost thou do here, O timid one?" She answered, "Blessed be thou. I am the daughter of the chief of the fishermen. At his command, I am engaged for religious merit, in rowing passengers across this river in my boat." And Sentin, beholding the maiden of celestial form endued with beauty, amiableness, and such fragrance, desired her for his wife. And repairing unto her father, the king solicited his consent to the proposed match. But the chief of the fishermen replied to the monarch, saying, "O king, as soon as my daughter of superior complexion was born, it was, of course, understood that she should be bestowed upon the husband. But listen to the desire I have cherished all along in my heart. O sinless one, thou art truthful. If thou desires to obtain this maiden as a gift from me, give me then this pledge. If, indeed, thou gives the pledge, I will of course bestow my daughter upon thee, for truly I can never obtain a husband for her equal to thee." Sentin, hearing this, replied, "When I have heard of the pledge thou askest, I shall then say whether I would be able to grant it. If it is capable of being granted, I shall certainly grant it. Otherwise how shall I grant it?" The fisherman said, "O king, what I ask of thee is this. The son born of this maiden shall be installed by thee on thy throne and none else shall thou make thy successor." VYASA continued, OBHARATA. When Sentin heard this, he felt no inclination to grant such a boon, though the fire of desire sorely burnt him within. The king with his heart afflicted by desire returned to Hastinapura, thinking all the way of the fisherman's daughter. And having returned home, the monarch passed his time in sorrowful meditation. One day, Vavratra approaching his afflicted father said, "All is prosperity with thee. All chiefs obey thee. Then how is it that thou grievest thus? Absorbed in thy own thoughts, thou speakst not a word to me in reply. Thou goest not out on horseback now. Thou lookst pale and emaciated, having lost all animation. I wish to know the disease thou suffers from, so that I may endeavor to apply a remedy." Thus addressed by his son, Sentin answered, "Thou sayest truly, O son, that I have become melancholy. I will also tell thee why I am so. O thou of BHARATAS line, thou art the only sign of this our large race. Thou art always engaged in sports of arms and achievements of prowess. But, O son, I am always thinking of the instability of human life. If any danger overtake thee, O child of Ganga, the result is that we become senils. Truly thou alone art to me as a century of suns. I do not, therefore, desire to wed again. I only desire and pray that prosperity may ever attend thee so that our dynasty may be perpetuated. The wise say that he that hath one son hath no son. Sacrifices before fire and the knowledge of the three Vedas yield, it is true, everlasting religious merit, but all these, in point of religious merit, do not come up to a 16th part of the religious merit attainable on the birth of a son. Indeed, in this respect, there is hardly any difference between men and the lower animals. O wise one, I do not entertain a shadow of doubt that one attains to heaven in consequence of his having begotten a son. The Vedas, which constitute the root of the Puranas and are regarded as authoritative even by the gods, contain numerous proof of this. O thou of Bharatas race, thou art a hero of excitable temper, who is always engaged in the exercise of arms. It is very probable that thou wilt be slain on the field of battle. If it so happen, what then will be the state of the Bharata dynasty? It is this thought that hath made me so melancholy. I have now told thee fully the causes of my sorrow. Vayyampayana continued. Vyavrata, who was endued with great intelligence, having ascertained all this from the king, reflected within himself for a while. He then went to the old minister devoted to his father's welfare and asked him about the cause of the king's grief. O bull of Bharatas race, when the prince questioned the minister, the latter told him about the boon that was demanded by the chief of the fishermen in respect of his daughter Gandavati. Then Vyavrata, accompanied by many Kshatriya chiefs of venerable age, personally repaired to the chief of the fishermen and begged of him his daughter on behalf of the king. The chief of the fishermen received him with due adorations, and, O thou of Bharatas race, when the prince took his seat in the court of the chief, the latter addressed him and said, O bull among the Bharatas, thou art the first of all wielders of weapons and the only son of Sentin. Thy power is great. But I have something to tell thee. If the bride's father was Indra himself, even then he would have to repent of rejecting such an exceedingly honorable and desirable proposal of marriage. The great man in whose seed this celebrated maiden named Satyavati was born, is, indeed, equal to you in virtue. He hath spoken to me on many occasions of the virtues of thy father and told me that the king alone is worthy of marrying Satyavati. Let me tell you that I have even rejected the solicitations of the best of Brahmarishis, the celestial sage Asita, who, too, had often asked for Satyavati's hand in marriage. I have only one word to say on the part of this maiden. In the matter of the proposed marriage, there is one great objection, founded on the fact of arrival in the person of a co-wife's son. O oppressor of all foes, he hath no security, even if he be an Ajara or a Gandharva, who hath a rival in thee. There's this only objection to the proposed marriage, and nothing else. Blessed be thou. But this is all I have to say in the matter of the bestowal or otherwise, of Satyavati. Vayyampayana continued, O thou of Bharatas race, Vyavrata, having heard these words, and moved by the desire of benefiting his father, thus answered in the hearing of the assembled chiefs, O foremost of truthful men, listen to the vow I utter. The man has not been or will not be born, who will have the courage to take such a vow. I shall accomplish all that thou demandest. The son that may be born of this maiden shall be our king. Thus addressed, the chief of the fishermen, impelled by desire of sovereignty, for his daughter's son, to achieve the almost impossible, then said, O thou of virtuous soul, thou art come hither as full agent on behalf of thy father sent in immeasurable glory. Be thou also the sole manager on my behalf in the matter of the bestowal of this my daughter. But, O amiable one, there is something else to be said, something else to be reflected upon by thee. O suppressor of foes, those that have daughters, from the very nature of their obligations, must say what I say. O thou that art devoted to truth, the promise thou hast given in the presence of these chiefs for the benefit of Satyavati, hath, indeed, been worthy of thee. O thou of mighty arms, I have not the least doubt of its ever being violated by thee. But I have my doubts in respect of the children thou mayst beget. Vayyampayana continued, O king, the son of Ganga, devoted to truth, having ascertained the scruples of the chief of the fishermen, then said, moved to by the desire of benefiting his father, chief of fishermen, "Thou best of men, listen to what I say in the presence of these assembled kings. Ye kings, I have already relinquished my right to the throne, I shall now settle the matter of my children. O fisherman, from this day I adopt the vow of brahmacharya, study and meditation in celibacy. If I die senseless, I shall yet attain the regions have perennial bliss in heaven." VYASA continued, upon these words of the son of Ganga, the hair on the fisherman's body stood on end from glee, and he replied, "I bestow my daughter." Immediately after, the apsaras and the gods with diverse tribes of rishis began to rain down flowers from the firmament upon the head of Dvavratra and exclaimed, "This one is Bhishma, the terrible." Bhishma then, to serve his father, addressed the illustrious damsel and said, "O mother, ascend this chariot, and let us go unto our house." VYASA continued, having said this, Bhishma helped the beautiful maiden into his chariot. On arriving with her at Hastinapura, he told Satan everything as it had happened. And the assembled kings, jointly and individually, applauded his extraordinary act and said, "It is really Bhishma, the terrible." And Satan also, hearing of the extraordinary achievements of his son, became highly gratified and bestowed upon the high self prince the boon of death at will, saying, "Death shall never come to thee as long as thou desires to live. Truly death shall approach thee, O sinless one, having first obtained thy command." Section 101. VYASA said, "O monarch, after the nuptials were over, King Santanu established his beautiful bride in his household. Soon after was born of Satyavati an intelligent and heroic son of Santanu named Chitrankata. He was endued with great energy and became an eminent man. The Lord Santanu of great prowess also begat upon Satyavati another son named Vishatravarya, who became a mighty bowman and who became king after his father. And before the bull among men, namely, Vishatravarya, attained to majority, the wise King Santanu realized the inevitable influence of time. And after Santanu had ascended to heaven, Bhishma, placing himself under the command of Satyavati, installed that suppressor of foes, namely, Chitrankata, on the throne, who, having soon vanquished by his prowess all monarchs, considered not any man as his equal. And beholding that he could vanquish men, Ajaras, and the very gods, his namesake, the powerful king of the Gandharvas, approached him for an encounter. Between the Gandharva and the formless one of the Krus, who were both very powerful, there occurred on the field of Kurukshetra a fierce combat which lasted full 3 years on the banks of the Saraswati. In the terrible encounter characterized by thick showers of weapons and in which the combatants ground each other fiercely, the Gandharva, who had greater prowess or strategic deception, slew the Kuru prince. Having slain Chitrankata, that first of many oppressor of foes, the Gandharva ascended to heaven. When that tiger among men endued with great prowess was slain, Bhishma, the son of Santanu, performed, O king, all his obsequies. He then installed the boy Vishatravarya of mighty arms, still in his minority, on the throne of the Krus. And Vishatravarya, placing himself under the command of Bhishma, ruled the ancestral kingdom. And the adored Santanu's son Bhishma, who was conversing with all the rules of religion and law. So, indeed, Bhishma also protected him that was so obedient to the dictates of duty. Section 102. VYASA said, O thou of Krus race, after Chitrankata was slain, his successor Vishatravarya being a minor, Bhishma ruled the kingdom, placing himself under the command of Satyavati. When he saw that his brother, who was the foremost of intelligent men, attained to majority, Bhishma set his heart upon marrying Vishatravya. At this time he heard that the three daughters of the king of Kasi, all equal in beauty to the Apsaras themselves, would be married on the same occasion, selecting their husbands at a self-choice ceremony. Then that foremost of Kar warriors, that vanquisher of all foes, at the command of his mother, went to the city of Varanasi in a single chariot. There Bhishma, the son of Sentin, saw that innumerable monarchs had come from all directions, and there he also saw those three maidens that would select their own husbands. And when the assembled kings were each being mentioned by name, Bhishma chose those maidens, on behalf of his brother. And taking them upon his chariot, Bhishma, that first of smitters in battle, addressed the kings, O monarch, and said in a voice deep as the roar of the clouds, the VYASA directed that when an accomplished person has been invited, a maiden may be bestowed on him, decked with ornaments and along with many valuable presents. Others again may bestow their daughters by accepting a couple of kin. Some again bestow their daughters by taking a fixed sum, and some take away maidens by force. Some wed with the consent of the maidens, some by drugging them into consent, and some by going unto the maidens' parents and obtaining their sanction. Some again obtain wives as presents for assisting at sacrifices. Of these, the learned always applaud the eighth form of marriage. Kings, however, speak highly of the Swayamvara, the fifth form as above, and themselves wed according to it. But the sages have said that wife is dearly to be prized who is taken away by force, after the slaughter of opponents, from amidst the concourse of princes and kings invited to a self-choice ceremony. Therefore, ye monarchs, I bear away these maidens hence by force. Strive ye, to the best of your might, to vanquish me or to be vanquished. Ye monarchs, I stand here resolved to fight. Kuru Prince, endued with great energy, thus addressing the assembled monarchs and the king of Kasi, took upon his car those maidens. And having taken them up, he sped his chariot away, challenging the invited kings to a fight. The challenged monarchs then all stood up, slapping their arms and biting their lips in wrath. And loud was the din produced, as, in a great hurry, they began to cast off their ornaments and put on their armor. And the motion of their ornaments and armor, O Janamaya, brilliant as these were, resembled meteoric flashes in the sky. And with brows contracted and eyes red with rage, the monarchs moved in impatience, their armor and ornaments dazzling or waving with their agitated steps. The charioteers soon brought handsome cars with fine horses harnessed diretto. Those splendid warriors then, equipped with all kinds of weapons, rode on those cars, and with uplifted weapons pursued the retreating chief of the Krus. Then, Bharata, occurred the terrible encounter between those innumerable monarchs on one side and the Kru warrior alone on the other. And the assembled monarchs threw up their full 10,000 arrows at the same time. Bhishma, however, speedily checked those numberless arrows before they could come at him by means of a shower of his own arrows as innumerable as that down on the body. Then those kings surrounded him from all sides and rained arrows on him like masses of clouds showering on the mountain breast. But Bhishma, arresting with his shafts the course of that arrowy downpour, pierced each of the monarchs with 3 shafts. The latter, in their turn, pierced Bhishma, each with 5 shafts. But, O king, Bhishma checked those by his prowess and pierced each of the contending kings with 2 shafts. The combat became so fierce with that dense shower of arrows and other missiles that it looked very much like the encounter between the Celestials and the Urjaras of old, and men of courage who took no part in it were struck with fear even to look at the scene. Bhishma cut off, with his arrows, on the field of battle, bows, and flagstaffs, and coats of mail, and human heads by hundreds and thousands. And such was his terrible prowess and extraordinary lightness of hand, and such the skill with which he protected himself, that the contending car warriors, though his enemies, began to applaud him loudly. Then that foremost of all wielders of weapons, having vanquished in battle all those monarchs, pursued his way towards the capital of the Bharatas, taking those maidens with him. It was then, O king, the mighty car warrior, King Selya of immeasurable prowess, from behind summoned Bhishma, the son of Sentin, to an encounter. And desirous of obtaining the maidens, he came upon Bhishma like a mighty leader of a herd of elephants rushing upon another of his kind, and tearing with his tusks the latter's hips at the sight of a female elephant in heat. And Selya of mighty arms, moved by wrath, addressed Bhishma and said, "Stay, stay." Then Bhishma, that tiger among men, that grinder of hostile armies, provoked by these words, flamed up in wrath like a blazing fire. Bow in hand, and brow furrowed into wrinkles, he stayed on his car, in obedience to KSHATRIYA usage, having checked its course in expectation of the enemy. All the monarchs seeing him stop, stood there to become spectators of the coming encounter between him and Selya. The two then began to exhibit their prowess upon each other, like roaring bulls of great strength at the sight of a cow en route. Then that foremost of men, King Selya, covered Bhishma, the son of Sentin, with hundreds and thousands of swift-winged shafts. And those monarchs, seeing Selya thus covering Bhishma at the outset with innumerable shafts, wondered much and uttered shouts of applause. Beholding his lightness of hand in combat, the crowd of regal spectators became very glad and applauded Selya greatly. That subjugator of hostile towns, Bhishma, then, on hearing those shouts of the KSHATRIYAS, became very angry and said, "Stay, stay." In wrath, he commanded his charioteer, saying, "Let down my car to where Selya is, so that I may slay him instantly as Garuda slays a serpent." Then the crew chief fixed the Varuna weapon on his bowstring, and with it afflicted the four steeds of King Selya. And, O tiger among kings, the crew chief, then, warding off with his weapons those of his foe, slew Selya's charioteer. Then that first of men, Bhishma, the son of Sentin, fighting for the succor of those damsels, slew with the Ander weapon the noble steeds of his adversary. He then vanquished that best of monarchs, but left him with his life. O bull of Bharatas race, Selya, after his defeat, returned to his kingdom and continued to rule it virtuously. And O conqueror of hostile towns, the other kings also, who had come to witness the self-choice ceremony, returned to their own kingdoms. That foremost of smitters, namely, Bhishma, after defeating those monarchs, set out with those damsels, for haste in Apur, whence the virtuous crew Prince Vishatravya ruled the earth like that best of monarchs, namely, his father Sentin. And, O king, passing through many forests, rivers, hills, and woods abounding with trees, he arrived at the capital in no time. Of immeasurable prowess in battle, the son of the ocean-going Ganga, having slain numberless foes in battle without a scratch on his own person, brought the daughters of the king of Kasi unto the cruces tenderly at lure his daughters-in-law, or younger sisters, or daughters. And Bhishma of mighty arms, impelled by the desire of benefiting his brother, having by his prowess brought them thus, then offered those maidens, possessing every accomplishment, unto Vishatravya. Conversing with the dictates of virtue, the son of Sentin, having achieved such an extraordinary feat according to kingly custom, then began to make preparations for his brother's wedding. And when everything about the wedding had been settled by Bhishma in consultation with Satyavati, the eldest daughter of the king of Kasi, with a soft smile, told him these words, "At heart I had chosen the king of Saubha for my husband. He had, in his heart, accepted me for his wife. This was also approved by my father. At the self-choice ceremony also I would have chosen him as my lord. Thou art conversing with all the dictates of virtue, knowing all this, do as thou likest. Thus stressed by the maiden in the presence of that Brahmanas, the heroine Bhishma began to reflect as to what should be done. As he was conversing with the rules of virtue, he consulted with the Brahmanas who had mastered the Vedas, and permitted Amda, the eldest daughter of the ruler of Kasi, to do as she liked. But he bestowed with due rights the two other daughters, Ambika and Ambalika, on his younger brother Vishatravirya. And though Vishatravirya was virtuous and abstemious, yet, proud of youth and beauty, he soon became lustful after his marriage. And both Ambika and Ambalika were of tall stature, and had the complexion of molten gold. And their heads were covered with black curly hair, and their fingernails were high and red. Their hips were fat and round, and their breasts full and deep. And endued with every auspicious mark, the amiable young ladies considered themselves to be wedded to a husband who was every way worthy of themselves, and extremely loved and respected Vishatravirya. And Vishatravirya also, endued with the prowess of the celestials and the beauty of the twin swings, could steal the heart of any beautiful woman. And the prince passed 7 years uninterruptedly in the company of his wives. He was attacked while yet in the prime of youth, with PHTHISIS. Friends and relatives in consultation with one another tried to effect a cure. But in spite of all efforts, the cruel prince died, setting like the evening sun. The virtuous Bhishma then became plunged into anxiety and grief, and in consultation with Satyavati caused the obsequial rites of the deceased to be performed by learned priests and the several of the Kuru race. The Mahabharata of KRISHNA-DWAIPAYANA VYASA. Translated into English, prose from the original Sanskrit text by Kisari Mohan Ganguli, 1883–1896. Calcutta.